We have seen a disgusting no campaign, a campaign that has been dishonest, that has lied to the Australian people, and I'm sure that'll come out in the analysis. I'm sure that history will reflect poorly on Peter Dutton, Pauline Hanson, all of those that have opposed this.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Voice referendum, which was the communist agenda for Australia in 2023, that cost taxpayers $364 million, has failed. It failed in a whopping defeat, with Yes 23 and the Bolsheviks at the ABC conceding defeat to the No campaign within only a few short hours after the close of polling booths. Which is kind of hilarious because ABC were ready to throw in the towel before the counting of votes had even started in Western Australia. AEC also predicted it might take up to a week before we get a result. But nope, it was pretty obvious within the first hour that the Yes campaign had zero chance. Despite Yes 23 having around $100 million to spend on propaganda and having the endorsement of almost every top 20 ASX listed corporation, they lost to the No campaign, who had $13 million to spend and basically zero public support from big corporations. I mean, just look at this list of endorsements for the Yes campaign. It's never ending.
If it's no, well, we know that the country's racist.
The racist thing. Undesirables, pedophiles, Nazi filth into cookers, an extreme right-winger.
White and racist.
Spewing the racism.
White racism.
Lunatic fascists.
Eugenicism.
Are specious and increasingly absurd.
Racism and stupidity.
Fascist.
Racism.
The nefarious, Trump-like, anti-Semitic filth.
Despite all of the dirty tactics of the AEC, like for an example, allowing ticks to be counted as yes when crosses would not be counted, or the AEC admitting that double votes may be counted, the Yes campaign lost anyway. Despite the ALP running an entire campaign built upon lies, from the Uluru Statement from the Heart to the involvement of UN drip. Also lies about alleged 80% of Aboriginals supposedly supporting the Voice to Parliament, when that number was based on an online poll that only a few hundred self-identifying Aboriginals took part in. They still lost. The odds were truly stacked against us, but in the end, the Australian people said no, and almost 2/3 of the votes reflected that. But the real No campaign, the unofficial one, people like you and I, should be very happy with the level of activism and content creation and advocacy that went into this. Now, for any of you guys out there who have been flicking through mainstream media or social media, you will see a lot of people and media outlets are very upset.
Cope!
There are a lot of city-dwelling, ABC-watching white women in particular crying about the result of the democratic process. Many of which are so upset that they say they are not even proud to be Australian anymore, and that our country is a racist one.
Yeah, that's right, cope!
Magda, who made a living from acting like an overweight, stupid person who was pretending to be funny, is in particularly upset. According to her tweet, she said, quote, "I'm so deeply saddened that this has been the result. To all our beautiful First Nations people, my heart goes out to you tonight. I wish this had been different. Please know that there are millions of us who love and treasure and support you. That we hear your voice and we will continue to walk with you." Unquote. Dr. Rawiri Taunuri had this to say, quote, "Yesterday, white Australians voted no to recognising black Australians as Indigenous Australians. In doing so, they voted for a white Australia." Unquote. I mean, there are like a millions of these I could go through, but I'll just read one more tweet. This one comes from Dr. Victoria Felding, a keyboard warrior whose Twitter rhetoric is so bizarre, I wonder if she's even a real human being. She had this to say, quote, "Indigenous communities overwhelmingly voted yes to Australia's Voice to Parliament, just as the Yes campaign said they would. Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine constantly said Aboriginal people did not support the Voice. They lied." Unquote. These people are so out of touch with the facts. Many of these people are claiming that Australia has turned its back on Aboriginal people. They actually think that 80% of Aboriginal people voted yes in the referendum, which is nothing but fake news and disinformation. Because voting is private, we don't actually know who voted for what, but we do know the data that is provided to the Australian people via the AEC official vote count results and the census data from 2021. So as you can see here, I made this chart of the seats with the biggest Aboriginal populations by percentage. Like I said, this data is taken from the official AEC tally room and the census data from 2021. So you can easily verify this for yourself. As you can see here, from the clearest data that we can possibly gather, Aboriginals in large did not vote for the Voice in the referendum this year. It's just a lie that the ALP and Yes23 came up with. Let's have a look at these districts. Lingiari was 56% no. Durack was 72% no. Burt was 66% no. Leichhardt was 65% no. Kennedy was a whopping 81% no. And Parkes was 80% no. And those districts are situated in 3 different states with 5 different parties representing them. Aboriginals in large did not vote for the Voice in the referendum this year. Be sure to remember this when virtue signalling yes campaigners try to lie and tell you that by voting no, you hurt Aboriginals. The Yes campaign were clear victims of ABC, SBS and NITV propaganda, and they did not look into the facts for themselves. The Yes campaign were the real arbiters of disinformation and censorship. The mainstream media really is to blame for this nonsense. I mean, just look at some of these headlines. From The Guardian, we have Indigenous Australians grapple with gut-wrenching result, but pledge to keep fighting. There's Marcia Langton. Now, here's another one from The Guardian, but it is 6 months old, but I just wanted to read it anyway because this was 6 months ago and I thought it was very relevant to today. Liberal Party accused of turning its back on Indigenous people by opposing Voice. How ridiculous. This one by SBS today. Australia has voted no to yet another referendum. Will one ever pass again? And look at these people crying. How ridiculous. This one came up on my phone from ABC. Indigenous Yes campaigners call for a week of silence to grieve tragic referendum defeat. It's like, give me a break. This one as well. Marcia Langton. Vote no and you won't get a welcome to country again. Don't threaten me with a good time, Marcia. This one was absolutely ridiculous by the Sydney Morning Herald. Australia said no, so what do I say to my kids? I mean, how ridiculous. How about you tell them the truth? Which is, the Australian people and the Aboriginal people did not want this Voice. Another one from the Sydney Morning Herald. Indigenous Yes campaigners fall silent as they grieve referendum result. These people don't look very Indigenous to me, but anyway. There are so many more of these, and I expect there will be more to come in the future. But let's remember that the Yes campaign are grieving for them greedy selves. Aboriginals did not want this, and the Australian working class did not want this. Only Canberra, the corporations, and city-dwelling activists wanted this. The ABC, The Guardian, and many other mainstream media outlets which publicly endorsed the Yes campaign are already pushing the notion that the referendum was stolen by disinformation. There is also a lot of talk for the proposal of bills which seek to disenfranchise the working class by removing our free speech. RMIT Fact Lab, the disgraced Marxist fact-checkers who couldn't keep a job on Meta for being biased and corrupt, are apparently the only ones who are allowed to decide what is and is not factual. Be on the lookout for how the conversation will start to shift towards wrongthink becoming a crime. The weaponization of fact-checking and the elimination of free speech will possibly ramp up because of this referendum result. So let's keep our eyes peeled and prepare ourselves for that. All in all, it's been a pretty good last few days, especially with this Voice referendum result. So just in closing, I'd like to read you guys a statement given by the Australian Nativist Association. And also a big shout out to those guys because they've been doing terrific work repopularising a lot of our lost literature. They claim, quote, "Despite an enormous, well-financed campaign by large Australian corporations, media entities, and other political parasites, the majority of this country has voted no to the constitutional amendments that would have given Parliament unfettered power to legislate a new, politically motivated arm of the federal government that would have been operated by radical pale-skinned Marxists masquerading as Indigenous people. This period shows us that the last few years of tyranny from the media and corporations during the COVID lockdowns have shattered the trust ordinary Australians have for what they are being fed by the ruling institutions. Australians have been taught critical thinking on a broad scale. Let us hope this represents a shift into the national psyche that there may still be in us, the reasonable instinct and the will to act for our own natural right to self-determination and self-preservation." Unquote. I hope you guys like this video. Be sure to drop a like and a comment below. Until next time, thanks for watching.